Alith Anar is a lord that exists. That's it. That's the whole video. No, he's actually one of the worst legendary lords in the game, in my opinion. He's not necessarily terrible in terms of his all-around stats, although he doesn't have any mount options, which means his HP is pretty low on foot. He's got elven stats, so attack and defense are decent. 400 weapon strength, also not terrible for a ranged lord. Not necessarily great either. His missile strength is also kind of there. It's at least AP. Yeah, a little over 300 overall with a decent reload time. And 300 range is really the biggest benefit that he has, to be honest. He's also got some abilities, which, to be honest, I'm curious to see if Moonbow does anything here. I'm not super high on it, but he has also got some mostly useless and cost-increasing buffs. Buffs are generally the least useful ability type, I would say. Like, AoE damage is obviously very good. Healing, you know, summons, those things are great. Buffs and debuffs really have to be very impactful to be useful in multiplayer, because you're often trying to optimize gold costs so specifically. But anyway, he's Carelith versus Pigman. And yeah, he's got Alith Anar here, as he's one of the lords for the competition, backed up by his Shadow Warriors, very thematically. Got some War Lions as well for some nice sort of chariot stand-ins. They're anti-infantry AP, and if used somewhat like chariots, can be effective. We've also got Lion Infantry, backed up by some Silver Helms there, and Lore of Metal, very strong right now, against Cathay. Also, Pigman here trying to compete right for this prize. He's bringing that Lord Magistrate, definitely one of the worst lords in the game overall, just a generic lord that also, again, focus around buffs, doesn't do anything. Support lords really need to be very good or very cheap, or a combination of both to be useful. Even if they're very cheap and don't really do anything, I mean, at best they're just going to be a cheap lord to go as wide army as possible. But anyway, we've got plenty of Jade Lancers here with some Onyx Crowmen, Satang looking to show Alith Anar who's the new cool guy with a bow, and some Jade Warriors backed up by Iron Hail Gunners. Got the Righteous Lances of Wei Jin up in the sky. Astromancer, nice and cheap, not faffing around with the Chariot. The Wuxing War Compass just really, again, adds a lot of cost for extra AoE damage, even still not really enough to justify paying for it. But anyway, let's see how things go. Shadow Warriors going to be pushing forward here, revealing themselves somewhat, taking some shots. They don't have the best AP values, but still good enough AP values overall, and more importantly, very good accuracy. All of their shots will be landing. And yeah, you can see they're doing some damage, definitely. 4 AP for shots, definitely not bad. Close to a crossbow, but not quite. But yeah, the effect on target is certainly impressive. The Moonbow kills one horseman. Oh, yeah. That's, again, just something to increase your cost. You know, Oxyotl also one that, like, he doesn't do a lot for you, but at least he has scaling damage. And, yeah, I think Alith Anar also has stock baseline, right? Or does he not even have stock baseline? He might not even have stock baseline, which is kind of hilarious, to be honest. We see Satang just nuking that Metal Mage there. But yeah, I mean, Oxyotl at least has stock baseline. He's got the scaling damage, even if he has a little bit less HP. He's also got poison as well. So even though he's also not wildly useful, you know, this ranged lord type, reason why, say, Marcus Wolfhard is so good. Number one, he's got a huge anti-large bonus on his bows, makes him actually good at shooting monsters. And number two, he's got a net, which is, again, hard snares are some of the most competitive and strong ability types of the game, so much so they're limited in tournament rule sets. But a brutal final transmutation going off here, hitting a whole bunch of units, but most importantly, the single entities in Satang and the Astromancer especially, cutting off his damage is going to be important to do. We've got these War Lions running around in here as well, doing some nice armor-piercing damage. You see them pull away as well. Very important to cycle charge here. Kirith is doing a really nice job of not leaving that in combat too long, at least on this side. On this other side, you can see here, they're kind of getting a little bit overmatched against, like, Crowmen and Jade Lancers. But, yeah, Satang now teeing off on Alith Anar. See how things go. Satang's got a very commanding hill position here, which is going to be helping him significantly. But also is being a little bit distracted, fighting some of these Elven infantry here. White Lions are a very good trade for Cathay and infantry generally, or I should say they trade well into Cathay and infantry for the High Elves. They're a great tool in this matchup. Throw them against most infantry here and just be fine, you know, especially with the armor nerfs. Not that White Lions need a lot of armor nerfs. They're armor piercing, of course, but they do have some amount of non-armor piercing damage, as do all units, and definitely the armor debuffs recently on those Jade Warriors do help somewhat, but yeah, High Elves definitely having some problems as the Righteous Lances of Wei Jin come in for a nice crump and rear charge, start to break up a lot of this mobility. We've just got the one kind of War Lion left. War Lions against the Crowmen especially will be at a good benefit because they're anti-infantry bonus. But here on the high ground, as my camera bugs out a little bit there, Silver Helm shutting down those Iron Hails. We see some bombardments coming in from Cathay as well. Jade Lancers coming in. White Lions, again, will do all right against Jade Lancers. So just a great generalist unit to take against Cathay. The missile resistance, a lot going for them here. But there was a point in time where I really wasn't a fan of White Lions, but it's definitely a matchup where they do well. And even the War Lions themselves proving they could be quite effective here, holding back and holding their leadership just long enough that the Onyx Crowmen actually give out, and the Righteous Lances of Wei Jin also rout. So looking pretty good there as the High Elves are kind of able to salvage their back line. Seitang, though, is putting a number on Alith Anar as he tries to take a bow fight for which he is absolutely and completely overmatched. But that's fine. He's going to stand up and keep going for the time being. Final Transmutation and his own, I'm going to say Way Watchers. They're Shadow Warriors, of course, similar to Way Watchers. But wow, he is like having chunks fly out of him every time he gets hit. That's pretty hilarious. But yeah, I mean, Alith Anar himself is basically just a damage sponge, not a very good one at this point. It's got less than 1,000 damage value, which he's about 1,100 base cost, which, to be honest, they could reduce his base cost. Seitang actually gets felled by the Shadow Warriors themselves here, and with him dropping, High Elves have quite a secure pocket to continue working with the Shadow Warriors and use up the last of their ammunition here, dumping into those tightly packed Iron Hails, doing some really nice damage as the Iron Hails struggle to return fire. Silver Helms and War Lions combining to be able to hold off those Jade Lancers. And the Metal Mage here is still alive. Same cannot be said for Alith Anar as he gets finished off by the Magistrate here. Alith Anar, so bad. He can be okay, honestly. If you're trying to, like, counter-shoot artillery, that 300 range can sometimes come into handy. I mean, it's not long enough to outshoot something like a Dwarven Cannon, but, I mean, it can help, certainly, if you have several bolt throwers plus Alith Anar and you're trying to, you know, out-artillery duel someone. You can surprise players who are unprepared for it, but that's basically the only use case for him. I don't know, maybe you High Elf mains out there can chime in and let me know if you feel something different, but, yeah, I mean, him getting killed by the Magistrate, I feel like, is just an absolute summation of where he's at. So, there you go. Speaking of the Magistrate, he's going to rally up onto the high ground here. Not that he has much left in his army. Gareth has a pretty commanding lead on damage value over Pigman here. So, let's fast forward through this endgame as he cleans up the rest of these troops. One Jade Warrior gets the Magistrate in combat. One thing the Magistrate could do is fulfill the same role as the War Compass, where basically he gives harmony regardless of whether or not, you know, you have ranged or melee units. He just gives harmony to everything nearby. That could actually be a way of making him mildly useful. So you still wouldn't take him, but it would give him a thing, right? Other than just some, like, kind of useless buffs. Another thing, too, would be to just increase the power level of those buffs, right? And this is true of any lord that really is reliant a lot on their buffs to be effective. For Alith Anar himself, he just needs better AoE damage, whether that's like better penetration on his bow shots, maybe a little explosive effect or something else, I'm not sure, but like the success of like the Master Engineer for the Empire, for example, right? Or even Malachi, who has like a little shotgun scatter shot, right? Just being able to hit a wider area than just one target at a time. That moonbow picking off one single horseman is a pretty good indication of that as well, right? Like that ability probably could do with some high penetration, and then if you were to skill shot it, you know, down the side of a unit, then that would actually be, you know, good and effective and also satisfying and fun to use. So yeah, Alith Anar, they could definitely do some things to help him out. It wouldn't take much, I don't think, to get him into a position where he's actually pretty decent, but right now, You're better off with literally any other High Elf Lord, to be honest. The army is really what does the work here and gets the win for Kirith, and the Shadow Warriors, you know, the sort of the unit version of Alith Anar are quite effective, and they do quite well here. I'm impressed with the performance of the War Lions as well. Nice to see them do well. White Line Infantry get as much value maybe as I expected, but just a great frontline unit to take a beating and dish out some damage also in this matchup. Silver Helms too, doing a nice job kind of road blocking, limiting Satang's value. And the cavalry also for Cathay did okay. Righteous Lances pay for themselves. Onyx Crowmen do not, and I think that's partially, again, due to the Lions. I actually like that tech pick here, just for the extra little anti-infantry bonus, and that high speed, too, allows them to counteract the Crowmen sort of wherever they go, right? So nice to see that here. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Hopefully you learned something. If you did, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.